All right, everyone, let's get this party started. Welcome, class, to Classics 160B1. Meet the Ancients! I, of course, am your professor, Dr. Rob Steffen, and today I've got bad news. We have to watch the end of the Golden Age in Athens. So this week, what we've been doing, right, is we've been talking about how Athens has flourished in the aftermath of the Persian Wars. And today we are all going to see that coming to a crashing halt. So let's go ahead and bring down the lights and bring down the projector, fire this thing up, and take a look at lecture 7.3, Athens versus Sparta and the Peloponnesian War. So let's see what we got on the dock for today. We're going to start with a few announcements. In particular, 1 week from today, you have got your midterm exam. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what the format of that exam is going to be and where you can find your study materials for that exam. Then we're going to move into a little bit of a recap of what we've been doing so far with classical Greece. And in particular, I'm going to want your input on what you think of some of the major developments that we've seen. So when we look at things like democracy and architecture and drama, right? I kind of want to hear from you as to what you see as the kind of most important development. So we'll see that in a little bit. And then finally, what we're going to do in that section is recap what you guys were doing in preparation for today, which is thinking how you can adapt some of the drama and plays from the ancient Greek world for a modern audience, right? How do some of those themes that were relevant in Athens 2,400 years ago, how do they maintain relevance in the world today? Then we're going to move into kind of the new part for today, and that's this battle between Athens and Sparta. And what we've seen is that this golden age has only been going on for something like 50 years, and these independent Greek city-states, they just can't get along, right? They share a culture, and they share a religion, and they share kind of a way of life, but they get awfully jealous of one another. And then finally, if we have time, about the last 10 minutes of today, I'm going to ask the honors students to stick around, and anybody else is welcome to stick around too. And what we're going to do is we're going to touch base on the project for the course. I want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable with the monument that they're going to be working on there. And then I'm going to kind of model what I want you guys to do in this project, right? So in particular, what we're going to do is a tour of the site of Delphi through the video game Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So we'll pick up the sticks and we'll play around a little bit with that. And I'm going to kind of show you how I envision you building this model of the ancient city-state of Delphi. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what we got for our announcements today. So you guys know the basics already. Put this thing in speaker view. You can see me, you can see the slides, you can see the images, everything you need. If you have a question as we're going through things, feel free to fire that off to your TA, all right? And they'll either answer your question or they'll funnel that to me, and when we're doing attendance, I can try to answer as many of those as I can. But my Achilles heel, if you will, is trying to multitask and read messages and lecture all at the same time. So fire that message to your TAs if you don't mind. Then the two other big things, midterm a week from today, and then honors project update at the end of the class. So feel free to stick around. And even if you're not doing the honors project and you just want to check out the tour of Delphi, what a better way to spend your lunch on Friday. Okay, so let's talk midterm for a second here. This is going to be 1 week from today. And the way that's going to work, this is online, and you don't have to come to the Zoom class. Right, so there's no attendance next Friday. You don't have to be here. What you're going to do instead is log on to D2L, go over to the little quizzes tab, and click on the midterm to start. So you can find it there. You can find it actually under Friday's class on D2L. You can find it under the thing that says midterm in the table of contents. You can find the midterm almost anywhere, all right? Now here's the way it's going to function, right? It's going to be open note. So all hail the glorious Dr. Rob on that one. But it will be timed. All right. That is the way that I'm going to kind of be testing your ability to have taken good notes in the class and to have paid attention. If you have to look up every single answer, you might do well on the ones you get to, but you're not going to get through everything, okay? So what I'd really like to see is you to come into this thing having studied, having to put your notes together in a logical order that you can make use of, and have enough kind of background knowledge that you'll actually know most of the questions just from the outset. And what that's going to do is it's going to leave you a lot of time to work on the essay question, okay? And so Jorge here in the chat has asked a good question about accommodations. The way that you operate with those is get in touch with the DRC. The DRC will go into the system and let me know that you've got accommodations. And on Monday of next week, I'm going to go through and input those for everybody, okay? So if you've got accommodations, if you've got a time and a half or 2 times in terms of length, that will automatically be set in. So instead of 50 minutes, you'll have 75 or 100, whatever it is for your particular situation. But the DRC is the one who sets those, so get in touch with them if that applies to you. And then finally, I've worked on getting up the study materials for the midterm here. And the place that you find those is on D2L, then go to content, and that kind of gives you the table of contents for the course, and then choose midterm and final exam, and that's where all the study guides live. And let's take a look at really quick what these things look like, okay? So on the left-hand side over here, what we've got is the kind of actual content and questions that are going to show up. And we've got a good question in the chat here in terms of whether it's going to go in order of the way that you guys have learned things. What do you think? What do you think TA is on this one? I haven't decided that. Should we keep things in order? Should we mix it up? What do you think, Karen?
I like the order and the structure side of things, if possible.
All right. Any alternative viewpoints?
I don't know if Zach has like any other intake on this. So.
Zach, what do you think?
I think it can help students understand, like, retrieve like the context of the question, like who is being referred to if the order is arranged in some sort of logical order.
Perfect. All right. TAs, the students are going to love you for this one. We will go in order on the exam. So we're going to start with the kind of Neolithic and the Bronze Age. We'll move through the Dark Ages into the Archaic and then the Classical period. All right. It might not be exactly in terms of every word I've said in these lectures, but it's going to be roughly in order chronologically of what we've covered. But what I want you to pay attention to here, right? You can download all these on D2L. But the important thing is that on the left-hand side, on the front page of the study guide, it's not just going to tell you kind of the topics that you need to know. What I've tried to do is give you examples of questions that might show up. And so you can kind of know the level of detail that you'll need for the test. All right? And so I've broken this down into a couple themes in terms of significance or names or material culture. And then tried to give you an example of something that I think is maybe that we talked about, but it was maybe too detailed for the class. And then an example of something that I actually think that is relevant and a large enough component from the class that it might show up on the exam. Then the next thing you've got is the actual information that we've covered here. And the way that I would do this is sit down with your note cards, right? Or sit down with a Word doc or something like that, and just type out what you know about each thing. You do that, and not only will you have good notes for the exam, but it's also going to burn that into your brain. And then finally, what we've got over on this side here, this is a list of 10 different essay questions, and I am going to choose one of those for the exam, all right? And so go through, and if I were you, I would spend some time over the next week maybe writing at least a brief outline for each one of those so that no matter which one shows up, you feel confident in at least some material and evidence you can use to support those questions. We'll talk more about this next week. What I want to see from you on those essays, right, is not a particular word count, so I don't need some magical number of words. The way what I kind of expect out of you is for you to be writing for about half the test, all right? So you're going to have 25 multiple choice questions, all right? That's going to take, I'm going to give you a minute per question there. It's not actually set up to be a minute per question, but on average, right, that should be about half of it. the essay should be about the other half. And in terms of the points, that's how they're going to be allocated, right? About half for the multiple choice, half for the essay. You've got one normal class period for the midterm, right? So it's going to be 12 to 12:50. And the thinking there is that allows you to get to any of the other classes you need to have during the day, right? Good question about sources here. And I've tried to put this up in the, if you read through the little overview on the essays, giving specific evidence is really useful, and it's going to be a big component of the essay itself, right? So what I've tried to say is if you're talking about Greek warfare and you say the Greeks fought a lot, that's not quite as detailed as I want you to be. I want you to be like, oh man, like in the beginning of the 5th century, they were going at it with the Persians, right? I mean, we've got the Battle of Marathon and Thermopylae and Salamis, right? And giving those kind of specifics. Or if you're talking about the developments of the 8th century, right? And you say, oh, writing began, which it did, that's important. But if you're able to say, with the Homeric epics, like Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, they don't need to be the parenthetical citations, all right? Like you've been putting in your written responses. We don't need those things so much. But if you can just kind of mention what the evidence is, I think that'll make for a much stronger response there. All right. How long? Okay, good. How many multiple choice? So it's 25 multiple choice. They're going to be worth 2 points each. And then one essay, and it'll be worth 50 points. Okay? And again, what I try to do as you go through that is allocate your time accordingly so that you can get, so that you're not left with 6 minutes to write the essay at the end of the test. All right, and then final thing in terms of the midterm, we can talk more about this on Monday if you want. Wednesday next week is going to be entirely dedicated to going over a review of what we've talked about so far. All right, so mark Wednesday's class in your calendar. If you've been skipping Wednesdays all semester, maybe make it there for that one. All right, let's go ahead and jump into recapping the Golden Age here. So we've seen this a couple times, right? And the Golden Age emerges after we get the conflict between Greece and Persia. And I love this slide because it does a good job of showing you how piddly little Greece is over here and how massive Persia was at the time, right? This is the greatest empire the world had ever seen. And in a series of conflicts, Greece is somehow able to repel Persian advances. And can somebody throw in the chat for me here a couple of the different conflicts that arose between Greece and Persia during the battles between these two groups? So go ahead and let me know what you guys think were the major conflicts between these two groups. The one with the boats. I like that. There was the one with the boats. That's a very important one. Thermopylae, right? That's the Spartan stand there. Earth and water. Absolutely right, Juliana. The Battle of Marathon. That's where it all begins. Artemisian. Oh, we haven't even talked about Artemisian in ages. Nice one there, Hunter. You got it, right? These are all big ones. What is the... Tobin here mentioned the one with the boats. Anybody remember what the one with the boats is called? It it sounds like something you might put on your lunch sandwich. The Battle of Salamis, that's right. And so the way that this works, right, is that we get Persia coming over to the Greek mainland after the Greeks had rebelled, right, the Greeks over in Ionia. And somehow, for the first time ever in history, somebody's able to actually put up a successful defense against the Persians. And it's those 9,000 Athenians at Marathon who are able to repel about 30,000 Persians. And then we get our guy Phidippides, right, running back to the city, running the world's very first marathon to announce victory to the Athenians. But that doesn't leave the Persians gone for good, right? 10 years later, they come back, and it's at Thermopylae, right, which the movie 300 is based on, where the Spartans, the 300 Spartans, put up this defense against the Persian kind of land-based army. And even though they heroically defend the pass at Thermopylae, they eventually are killed. And the Greeks have to retreat from there, right? They got to retreat from Thermopylae to Athens and then retreat from Athens to Corinth. And the Persians actually burn the entire city of Athens in the aftermath of this battle. And then amazingly, right, the Greeks end up tricking the Persians into kind of one final battle. The Greeks are hurt, and they somehow sucker in the Persians to a naval battle. And they do this by sending in the kind of almost fake traitor, right? Announcing that the Greeks are almost defeated in one final Persian victory, and all the Greeks are going to come over to the Persian side. But the Greeks are hiding behind the little isthmus at Salamis, and they come out and they are able to destroy the Persians in naval battle. And why is that so important? Anybody remember why it's so important that the fleet of the Persians was destroyed in this battle? It's not just because that limits their ability to conduct naval warfare. So Isabella, yeah, there you go. Isabella and Ava, you got it exactly, right? It's not just that they're limited in their ability to conduct naval warfare now. It's that the supply lines that have been feeding the land-based army are now broken. Now, according to Greek historians, ancient Greek historians, on the same day that battle was fought, we get a battle fought in Sicily between Greeks and Carthaginians. And it probably didn't actually happen on the same day, but they like to say that it did. And we see that the Greeks are able to defeat the Carthaginians by sending this kind of fake Carthaginian cavalry into the Carthaginian camp. Slaughter ensues. And on this day in 480 BC, the Greeks have established themselves as kind of the most prolific, most prominent, most powerful culture in the Mediterranean. And so we can see at this time, right, that the Greek homeland might be in the dark green over here, but their influence is spread all over the Mediterranean to the Black Sea in southern Italy and Sicily and southern France and eastern Spain, right, all over the place through the course of the Archaic period and now coming into the Classical period. Okay, and in the aftermath of these victories, we get a leader in Athens, right? We get this guy Pericles, or at least what Pericles looks like in Civilization 6 if you guys are big Civ fans. Have you guys ever played this game? When I was like younger than you, when I was like 13 or 14, Civilization 2 came out, and it's one of these games that's like very kind of addictive, and as you get longer, like further into the game, it goes on and on and on, and like you're just like, it's 3 a.m, and you're like, one more turn, and I can invent nuclear power or something. Highly recommend it if you haven't played it so far. Anyway, Pericles, in terms of our story, is important because he becomes the leader in Athens during the Golden Age. He establishes the Delian League, which has all these different city-states throughout the Mediterranean and throughout the Aegean, sending tribute to Athens, and they're able to use that tribute. Pericles uses that tribute for all sorts of cultural purposes, right? And this is the discussion question we talked about on Wednesday, is like, is this justified, right? Kind of exploiting other city-states, but doing wonderful cultural things with it. So, can we go ahead? I want to hear from you guys in the chat again here. What are some of those developments, right? When you think of classical Greece, what are the types of things that emerge during the 5th century here? So we've got the Acropolis, right? Architecture on the Acropolis. We've got drama. We've got philosophy. The Temple of Athena and Nikkei on the Acropolis. We've got sculptures, right? They're becoming more lifelike and fluid. Art and pottery, very good. What sort of political form is booming during the 5th century, even though it was created a little bit earlier? Democracy, that's right. Very literally the power of the people. You guys have almost gotten this in the exact order that I wanted to go through it here. We have got the Golden Age. And what I want to hear from you guys now, all these things are correct. All right? So democracy, sculptural realism and fluidity, Attic red figure pottery, drama and histories and poetry, new architecture on top of the Acropolis, the Parthenon. I want to hear from you. What do you think is the most important? So the first question, I'm going to put a poll up here. First question is, what do you think is most important in the ancient world? Okay? In terms of the impact it made at the time, in antiquity, right? Which of these things that you guys all just mentioned is most important? So go ahead, take 30 seconds, take a minute here, and let's see what you have to say. All right, we've got most of the votes in here. And what we've got is we've got about half the people saying democracy, and kind of the other half are split relatively evenly between the other four things. Can I get one of the advocates for democracy to do kind of the little hand raise here and justify your answer? Why do you think why do you think democracy was the most important thing? Juliana, I saw your hand first, you've got the stage. Why do you want to argue for democracy here?
I want to argue for democracy because the democracy starting in ancient Greece is kind of what led to having democracy nowadays, and I feel like that's very important for us and for the world.
Excellent, thank you. So it kind of not only is important in terms of Athenian politics at the time, but also in terms of its lasting legacy. Can I get a volunteer from one of the other four, right? Literature, philosophy, drama, art, and architecture, to raise their hand in the kind of chat here and just justify why you think this is your thing was the most important in the ancient world. All right, Isabella, the stage is yours.
I thought that literature was really important because it was a way for like the historians now to see what it was like to live in the past.
Okay, excellent, right? So it kind of gives us the best insight into how things operated. Jason, would you like to build on that?
Sure. I was I voted for philosophy. So the reason why I did that was so everything like the most popular choice was democracy, but you also have to think like why do people advocate for democracy at this time? Like they decided to experiment with it, and it starts with like the human mentality at the time. So I feel like philosophy as in terms of like not just thinking about deities that if you do something bad things are going to happen, and you start approaching things more logically, like as you were saying in previous classes, and experimentally. That goes a huge way into not believing in what's the word for believing a bunch of gods?
Like polytheism.
Polytheism, yeah. And I think that philosophy in itself was a huge paradigm shift from archaic Greece to classical Greece. So yeah.
Excellent, thanks, Jason. So one of the things that you're kind of arguing there is that these other things, literature and drama and democracy, are almost outcomes of the core change, which is really a philosophical change. That's an interesting perspective. I like that. Kellen, would you like to jump in here and we'll take your opinion here, and then we'll continue on with what happens in the aftermath of the Golden Age.
Well, I was pretty much covered. My reasoning behind why literature would be important to the Greeks would be just kind of the start of what we could consider modern recorded history. not necessarily. Like, it transcends oral tradition into a point of time where we can actually put words down and save them for posterity. So that's why I would argue for literature. Because without literature and the written record, we can't say for sure if oral tradition would have passed down this knowledge for the 2,000 years necessary that it would take. So.
Excellent. Great. Thank you guys so much for your contributions here. And one of the things that I want everybody to take away from the discussion and kind of from the little survey here, this is one of the possible essay questions that might show up on the exam. And what you're going to notice is there is no right answer. I'm not saying democracy is right or literature is right? It's going to be your ability to justify your answer logically and with evidence that's going to make a good answer on that. And so there are a number of those types of essay questions on that study guide that are somewhat opinion-based, but the quality of your response is going to be judged by your ability to support it logically and in terms of evidence. Okay, so let's go ahead and we are going to run back through everything that we just talked about here. You guys already covered most of this, but we've got classical Greek democracy. We saw the funeral oration of Pericles last time. We've got philosophy, right? And the question now is not how does the world work, but what does it mean to be good in the world, right? A very different type of question about kind of behavior and what it means to be a good person. We've got sculpture, right? And this is what you guys were talking about now. Instead of being very rigid like we were in the archaic, all of a sudden it's fluid, still idealized, but fluid and realistic. We've got architecture, right? And somebody throw in the, let's go through each of these. What is this building right here? What is this one that's kind of at the entryway to the Acropolis? That is the Propylaea, right? Very literally translated as the front gate. What about this tiny little thing here, right? So this one's tough to see. It's a tiny little temple. It is the temple of Athena Nikkei, right? Athena, the goddess of victory. What about the big mama back here? That is the Parthenon. You guys know it and love it. And finally, this strange building over here. Which one's that? It is the Erechtheion. Very good, right? That's the one where the contest for Athens between Athena and Poseidon mythologically took place. Excellent. Very good. So we've got architecture there. We've got pottery right now in the 5th century emerging into this kind of red figure pottery with the kind of figures in that orange-red color, the black background. When you guys go to the museum, you can now point out to your friends and family and significant others your art historical knowledge of the ancient Greek world. Okay, and then finally, right, we've got classical Greek drama. And one of the coolest things here is that it's not just for fun, right? Like a lot of times, I don't know, if you're like me, I spend my nights, have some dinner, been watching the most recent season of Top Chef and just having a good time and watching them cook amazing things and eating my my canned pasta or whatever. But in the ancient world, right, drama was much more than just entertainment. First of all, it was intimately tied to religion and the celebration of the gods, especially Dionysus. And also, this was a way to convey both morals, which happens through tragedies and stories of the gods, as well as comment on current situation in society. And this happened in comedies, right? So comedies are funny, but they're also a commentary on daily life. And that's kind of what you guys were doing in preparation for today. So I was wondering if I could just get, one or two people to share their adaptation of one of Aristophanes' plays. So let's go ahead and what I'd like you to do is I will go ahead and check out the raised hands here and just tell me a little bit about which play you chose. Let me shrink myself here and get myself out of the way. Okay, tell me which play you chose. Give a very, very brief summary of what that play was, just a few words on that, and then tell me about your new adaptation of that to the modern world. So Harry, I got your hand first. The stage is yours.
the virtuous people, I guess. And I adapted that to modern context because in like the Chinese culture, there's a god of money, and on Chinese New Year's, we tell like people, 恭喜发财, which like literally like it wishes prosperity among people, but like the literal definition means like I hope you get rich, and we hand out like red envelopes of money in it to like the kids and stuff. So.
That is so cool. That is a wonderful adaptation. Excellent. Anastasia, I see your hand up as well. Would you like to tell me a little bit about which play you adapted and how you did so?
Yes. So I actually also chose the Plutus play, and basically I did a modern adaptation, but I also kept a twist, and I still said it was a blinded old god of Plutus because, most people don't really worship, like, quotation, the old gods anymore. And he's instead taken by a just fired, like, gold-hearted politician, which are rare these days, who was, again, fired, but he wishes to help end homelessness in their city. And with the help of Plutus, who is the god of wealth, he believes that they can change, like, the homeless population by distributing wealth to, like, the homelessness, because most homeless people do have, like, hearts of gold.
Wonderful. I love it. I feel like you need to write this thing. That sounds excellent. And Ritik?
Hi. So I did the adaptation on Lysistrata. So we see that she convinces other women to go celibate because they want their husband to stop fighting the war. What I said was I did kind of a short kind of a TV show where I see that a group of mobster women or a drug cartel wives, they sit around a table and they're discussing wearing this jewelry and all, and then suddenly the Lysistrata of those women, of those wives, convinces the other woman to go celibate because the drug cartel business is going really dangerous and all, and then one of the other women says our husbands would never agree to it. If we don't satisfy them, they'll find satisfaction outside, prostitution kind of stuff. And then she says that no, if they do that, we'll threaten them by exposing them to the kids and all. So that was my adaptation.
Wonderful. I love it. Thank you all so much for sharing your adaptations. And this is one of the reasons we study this in the first place, right? The way that you guys are thinking about this now is that the themes that emerge, right, while they're commenting on the specific situation in Athens, the reason this is still relevant today is because you can take that same theme and place it in the 21st century in many different ways, and it still feels very, very applicable. So what I'd like to do now is now tell the story of the downfall, right? 480 BC, the Greeks are on top of the world. Syracuse and Sicily, super wealthy. Athens and their fleet dominating the Mediterranean. Sparta and their land army, right? Crushing any comers. But these three groups start to feel a little bit kind of jealous of each other. Athens is getting really wealthy with their fleet controlling the grain trade. From the Delian League, right, getting tribute from lots of these different city-states throughout the Aegean Sea, and they're using that to fund all those developments that we talked about earlier today. And then this conflict starts to erupt between Athens and Sparta, and at first it's what we'd consider almost like a Cold War, where Athens and Sparta during this first Peloponnesian War, they don't actually fight each other. But Athens is kind of fighting with Corinth, and Corinth is allied with Sparta, and then Athens is fighting Megara, which is allied with Sparta, and Sparta's fighting up in Thebes, which is allied with Athens. And so they're kind of fighting each other, but through little proxies. And towards the end of this war, Athens ends up signing something known as the Peace of Nikkius with the Persians. And if you remember back, the reason Athens is getting all this tribute from the Delian League is that they're supposed to be providing protection from the Persians. So once this peace treaty is signed, all of a sudden, all those city-states throughout the Mediterranean are like, why are we paying Athens at all? They start revolting like crazy. right? So Boeotia is a region kind of up northwest of Athens. They revolt. Euboea, one of the big kind of island peninsulas, revolts. Megara, fairly close to Athens, revolts. And so there's revolts all over saying, we don't want to pay you tribute anymore. And it's only the leadership of this guy Pericles right here that's able to calm everything down. So he does so partially with his military, right? There's actually military reconquest there. He's able to sign a 30-year treaty with Sparta at this point, right? So that kind of first Peloponnesian War comes to an end with a 30-year treaty. I'll give you a hint, it doesn't last 30 years. Part of what he does is he renounces his claim. He's like, all right, you know what? We don't care about the mainland anymore. All the mainland is free. We have no claim to any of it. And that is part of what gets people kind of satisfied in the short term there. But then in the islands, he starts expanding Athenian power once again. So he starts allying with different city-states and then kind of making decisions for them, which isn't supposed to happen in the world. Oh, quick question in the chat here. The name of the treaty is CLAS, C-A-L-L-I-A-S. And so Athens is once again trying to grow this empire. And where we left off, right, is we've got Syracuse. And Athens is kind of wary of Syracuse because they are getting awfully wealthy. And then Sparta's kind of wary of Athens because their dominance at sea is getting really, really powerful. And everybody's always kind of scared of Sparta because they are the most dominant land army in the entire Greek world. And so we've got this very, very uneasy political and military ecology going on between the different major players in Greece at the time. All right, so let's go ahead. I want you guys to take a minute or two to input your attendance for today. So go to D2L. It's quiz number 17, February 26th, and choose orange. As in, aren't you glad you chose to meet the ancients? So I'll give you a minute here, and then we'll pick up with the war itself. So a couple important questions here in the chat. Somebody's asking, what's the drink of the day? It is water. I haven't been to Costco in a long time, so I'm out of my vitamin Reigns and my Kirkland Signature sparkling waters. So I just got to drink regular water, like a pleb. Oh, Lucas actually did ask a good real question. How did Pericles manage to pull all this stuff off? Part of it is simply the wealth in Athens, right? So part of it is the fact that they have the finances to be able to do a lot of these different things. And the other part of it, and you can kind of get this from Pericles' different speeches on democracy, is he really attributes a lot of it to democracy itself. And the way that he justifies that, the way that he the way that he kind of views the benefits of democracy is that unlike a monarchy or a tyranny or where there's a single person ruling, even if they're really, really smart, what he says is democracy is able to bring together really different ideas and people with different kind of sets of expertise. So all of a sudden you've got like a farmer who knows everything about farming, and a fisherman who's an expert in that, and a general who's an expert in military affairs. And it's the integration of those ideas that it makes kind of democracy so successful. That's how Pericles ends up justifying it from his own perspective. So let's go ahead and dive into the war itself. I think what we'll do is let's save the kind of honors project Assassin's Creed overview. Let's save that for Monday, and then we'll conclude today with the Peloponnesian War itself. So when we talk about the Peloponnesian War, it's technically the Second Peloponnesian War, but nobody really calls it that. They just call it the regular Peloponnesian War. But this is the war between Athens and Sparta. And in 431, Sparta says that Athens has messed too much with its allies, and they are going to war. And so they try to rally the Peloponnesian League, right? That's the kind of big peninsula that Sparta's on. And they're trying to take the fight to Athens, not just Sparta itself, but also all of its allies. And what you'll see here, the quote here is a guy by the name of Thucydides, and he is our best source for the way that this happens. You're not actually reading him for this class, but if you go on and take other courses, he's super interesting to read because unlike his predecessor Herodotus, Thucydides, he's saying like he really wants to get things right. And what he says at the beginning is basically like, this is going to be kind of boring. And you might not like it because it doesn't feel like a romance. But tough luck, I'm telling you exactly what happened, and I'm telling you the truth. Now, of course, when you read it, there are all kinds of biases. Thucydides is actually in the war. He was an Athenian general, writing this stuff as it happened. But he's, of course, very biased because of that perspective. One of the things I really liked as I was kind of preparing for the lecture was when I was reading some of it, there's this one quote that he's got that reminded me, especially in February with Black History Month, very much of like something that you would read in terms of kind of the civil rights movement. When you have this quote here, when one's deprived of one's liberty, one is right in blaming not so much the man who puts the shackles on as the one who had the power to prevent it, but did not use it. And so I think that's kind of good, eternally sage philosophy that, if you are lucky enough to have power in the world, you have to use that for good rather than just sit back and watch and kind of appreciate the power for your own kind of needs. So Thucydides is our guy for kind of our knowledge of the Peloponnesian War. Now, the war itself is kind of between the Peloponnesian League, right, down here, with Sparta and Corinth, right, all this area in red. They ally with Macedonia as well. And then also the Delian League, right? So remember all those allies. Pericles was able to get some of them back together. And so it's not just Athens and Sparta, it's two kind of almost empires going up against each other. And it happens in three parts. Before I get into this, though, Jorge has got a great question in the chat in terms of slavery. It is something that the Greek economy was built on slavery, but it was very different than what we get in the modern world, or that we get in like the 19th century, in the sense that it's not race-based. It's basically, it comes out of like wars like these. So if you win the war, you take the people you defeated and you frequently make them slaves or you sell them off as slaves. And so it's not necessarily that makes it any better, but it's a different kind of structure than kind of the chattel slavery, race-based slavery in the United States in the 18th and 19th centuries. So the war happens in three parts. The first part, Sparta comes up to Athens, right? So Sparta marches their army up to the city of Athens. Athens is protected by its city walls. And in particular, the thing I want you to remember about this part of the war are these long walls. They build walls that are 10 miles long. That is a long, long wall. They build it from the city down to the port. Anybody know why that's so important? What does this allow Athens to do? Anybody know? Yeah, exactly, right? Exactly what you guys are putting in there. What Sparta does is they can't break down Athens' walls. So they are camped around Athens. They're trying to starve them out, but they can't do it because Athens can march down to the port, send their ships off to get grain, and bring that food back into the city. So for like the first 10 years of the Peloponnesian War, it's like skirmish fighting. It's like attacking of allies. Athens takes their ships to go invade the Peloponnese. Sparta takes its land army and goes and fights little areas around Athens, but can't really get into Athens itself. And at the end, they sign a peace treaty. Nobody really wins. They sign a peace treaty in 421. It's called the Peace of Nikkius, and it's supposed to last for 50 years. And I'll give you a hint, it doesn't last for 50 years. In large part because we get one of the most kind of wild Athenians ever. This guy by the name of Alcibiades, or Alcibiades, depending on your pronunciation. And he is this like young, like flamboyant Athenian who's known for his like sexual escapades. And all he wants to do is fight. And he's like rousing the Athenians and saying, why are we at peace? We need to go back to war. And I'm going to tell you how we win the war. We need to go take over the island of Sicily. The whole thing. And he actually convinces the Athenians that this is a good idea to take their whole fleet over to the island of Sicily and attack them. And he's like, if we have that, we'll have all the grain and we can finish this war. Now, the night before the Athenians leave for Sicily, it's said that it was this guy Alcibiades and his gang. Other people argue that it was somebody trying to frame him. They go around the city and they chop off the members of all the Herms in the city. So this is a Herm over here. It's got the head of Hermes and the other head of Hermes on it. And it's used to kind of mark different intersections, place it outside the home to bring good luck to the home, safe travel within the city. It's something that's generally there for good luck. And the fact that these have been defaced or castrated is very, very bad luck. And Alcibiades actually goes on trial for this. But nonetheless, he's on trial. He ends up getting convicted. And before he can get punished, he runs away to Sparta and joins the Spartans. So he just betrays Athens completely. Nevertheless, the Athenians think that his idea was a good one. So they go over and they sail over to the island of Sicily. And they start thinking about how they're going to do this. Now, remember Sicily, it's got a lot of different groups here. You got all these native groups, the Elymians and the Sicanians and the Sicelians. And then you've got the Greeks and you've got the Carthaginians too. And one of the things that happens is they're out here in the western part of the island, especially at the site of Segesta. And Segesta wants them to team up against their own foes. And they go in and they show them all this gold. And they say, we're super wealthy. If you team with us, you're going to have all the funding you want. But really what they're doing is as the Athenians are going around, they're taking one thing of gold and just moving it from one house to the next so that every house the Athenians go to, they like are showing the same thing of gold, but the Athenians don't catch on. But Athens is in, they want to fight, and they besiege the city of Syracuse. And they try to trap them in by building a wall and starving them out. But then the Syracusans are building other walls to defeat like the kind of wall building, and it doesn't work. The Athenians get mired in here, right? And then Sparta starts sending their kind of smaller fleet, but Sparta's able to team up with the Syracusans, and it's bad. And by the end of this, the Athenian fleet is destroyed. Now, this is really, really a bad time for Athens. We'll go into it more detail on Monday, but I want to show you how bad this thing is. It gets to the point where Sparta now allies with Persia. Athens takes Alcibiades back. Things are so bad, they're like, that guy was crazy, maybe it'll work. So they bring him back into the city. Democracy is disbanded, and they return to like an oligarchy. They're so poor at this point in time that they need to rebuild the fleet that was destroyed at Syracuse. They go into the Parthenon, take the golden statue of Athena, and melt it down so that they can get the gold from it and rebuild their fleet. And it almost works. They win a huge battle a couple of years later, a naval battle at the site of Arcanusae. So they win so much that Sparta is like suing for peace. Sparta's like, this war has been going on for 25 years, we're done with it. And Athens is like, no, we will crush you. And that is a stupid move on Athens' part there. And 2 years later, at the site of Pottery, up here, Sparta gets there first, gets the kind of best land there. they're able to kind of trap the Athenians and start starving them. And then one day when the Athenians leave their ships to go forage for food, the Spartans come in and annihilate them all. And they beat Athens so bad that they can basically put any type of penalty on them. They make Athens destroy their own fleet. So they're only allowed to have 10 ships, that's it. They make them destroy the long walls. They force an alliance. They get rid of this kind of democracy, oligarchy, what was there at the time. They install 30 tyrants that are all favorable to Sparta in the Athenian government. And so the end of this war, which lasts 27 years, is a major Spartan victory. And we're less than a century from the big Greek defeat of the Persians, and the golden age in Athens has come to a close. So that is it for today. Go ahead and start studying for the exam next week. On Monday, we will go ahead and tackle the honors project as well at the very end of class. But have a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday. All right. Bye, everyone.